The electromagnetic signature heading for the server farm wasn't just moving through the building. It was broadcasting a recognition code that identified it as authorized maintenance personnel. Morrison, David said as they climbed. Whoever is heading for those servers has legitimate building access. They're not just inside the building. They're supposed to be here. The 25th floor was eerily quiet when David and Janet emerged from the stairwell. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across corridors that were normally bustling with technical personnel. The server farm occupied the entire north wing of the floor, protected by multiple layers of security that included biometric scanners, electromagnetic locks, and pressure-sensitive flooring. David's equipment showed the mobile electromagnetic detector was already inside the server farm, which should have been impossible without triggering dozens of additional alarms. But as they approached the security checkpoint, they found the biometric scanner displaying an active authorization for someone who was definitely supposed to be there. The morning sun cast long shadows across downtown Seattle as David Williams loaded his van with diagnostic equipment. The work order from Meridian Financial Tower sat crumpled on his passenger seat, marked Urgent Priority 1 in red ink. After 20 years in the security system business, David had seen every type of malfunction imaginable. But this case had already earned a reputation among the tech community. Meridian Financial Tower stood 43 stories above the bustling financial district, housing some of the most powerful investment firms on the West Coast. Inside, billions of dollars in daily transactions flowed through cryptocurrency exchanges and international banking operations, making it one of the most security-conscious structures in the city. The problems had started exactly 3 months ago. At 11:43 p.m., motion sensors on the 32nd floor had triggered a full building alert. Security teams rushed to investigate and found nothing. No broken windows, no signs of entry, no explanation for the activation. The alarms continued with maddening irregularity. Sometimes twice in one night, sometimes not for a week, always on different floors, always with the same result: empty hallways and frustrated security personnel. That's the strangest part. Janet switched to a timeline view. They happen at all hours with no consistency whatsoever. But David was seeing something that made his pulse quicken. The alarms weren't random. They were following a sequence visible only when you examined the intervals between them, not the times themselves. "I need to see the raw sensor data from each incident," David said. After Janet entered her authorization code, streams of technical data filled the screen. David absorbed the information with focused intensity, and in that data he found the first clue that would unravel everything. The raw sensor data revealed what nobody had bothered to read. While security focused on the absence of intruders during alarm events, they had missed the presence of something else: subtle electromagnetic signatures that preceded each false alarm by exactly 17 minutes. David discovered this pattern while reviewing overnight data. The electromagnetic readings were so faint they registered as background noise unless you knew exactly what to look for. "Do you have tenants who work with radio frequency equipment?" David asked. "Research labs, telecommunications companies." Janet consulted her directory. Floor 32 houses quantum dynamics research, encryption technology for government contracts. Floors 18 through 21 are Horizon Communications, a satellite networking firm. Someone is using directed electromagnetic interference to trigger your motion sensors. The 17-minute delay gives them time to be far away when security responds. The implications hung in the air like a loaded weapon. If someone was deliberately triggering false alarms, they had a reason beyond simple vandalism. "Are you saying someone is testing our response times?" Janet asked. "I'm saying someone is conditioning your security team to ignore alarms." After 47 false responses, how motivated are your guards to rush to the next one? David overlaid the electromagnetic signature data onto the building schematic. The pattern that emerged made his blood run cold. The false alarms weren't testing the entire building's security. They were mapping it. "Look at this," he said, pointing to clusters of alarm locations. "Every major security choke point has been triggered multiple times. Someone is learning exactly how long it takes your team to respond to each area." Janet's FBI training took over as she analyzed the tactical implications. If they know our response times and patterns, they could plan a real intrusion down to the second, David finished. But David had found something else in the electromagnetic signatures that suggested time was running out. The intervals between false alarms were decreasing, forming a countdown sequence that would reach zero in less than 18 hours. David's advanced signal analysis revealed that the electromagnetic signatures weren't just triggering false alarms. They were transmitting encrypted information. Someone had turned Meridian Tower into an unwitting transmission station, using the chaos of false alarms to mask a steady stream of data exchange. The genius of the operation became clear as David traced the signal paths. Every time security responded to a false alarm, they were facilitating a dead drop of information flowing through the building's electromagnetic infrastructure. But the most disturbing discovery was the timing. The intervals between false alarms formed a countdown sequence when measured in 6-hour blocks, accelerating to a precise pattern that would reach zero at 2:17 a.m. the following night. "We have a countdown," David announced to Janet, "and it reaches zero tomorrow night." Janet reached for her phone to coordinate evacuation, but David stopped her. "If we evacuate, we lose our only chance to catch them. They've spent 3 months perfecting this operation. Are you suggesting we use the building as bait?" "I'm suggesting we use their own system against them. If they're relying on electromagnetic communication, I can trace those signals to their source." The decision was taken from them when David's equipment detected another electromagnetic signature coming from inside the building. "They're already here," he said. "The transmission is coming from somewhere below the 20th floor." The electromagnetic scanner led them through maintenance corridors to a utility room on sublevel B2. There, attached to the main power coupling, was a device no larger than a smartphone, but connected directly to the building's electrical grid through professionally installed bypass circuit. "An inside job," Janet said grimly. "Someone with building access and technical expertise." David's analysis revealed the device was monitoring and recording all electrical activity throughout the building. Power consumption for every floor, when offices were occupied, when equipment was active. But most disturbing was the discovery that this wasn't a single device. It was part of a network with at least 6 other nodes receiving data. Suddenly, David's scanner detected a massive spike in electromagnetic activity from all network nodes simultaneously. "They're activating," he said. "Whatever they planned for tomorrow night, they've moved it up." At exactly 3:47 p.m., every alarm in Meridian Financial Tower went silent. The silence was more terrifying than any alarm. David had never experienced a complete shutdown of a building's detection systems while knowing threats were present. The electromagnetic network was now operating at maximum capacity, creating an electronic storm that interfered with radio communications. "They're jamming our communications while they work," Janet said into her radio. "David, can you shut down their network?" David was already analyzing the problem. The electromagnetic devices weren't just surveillance tools. They were connected to critical building systems. Shutting them down carelessly could disable elevators, emergency lighting, and fire suppression systems. "They've integrated their equipment with building infrastructure," David explained. "If I cut the wrong connection, we could lose essential services." Instead of trying to shut down the network, David decided to use it. "If I can't shut them down, I'm going to track them down. Their own communication system will lead me directly to them." Using the perpetrator's network against them, David traced data flows to identify command centers within the building. What he discovered was both brilliant and terrifying. Multiple operational centers on different floors, each disguised as routine maintenance work, conducting a comprehensive infiltration of every major tenant simultaneously. "Floor 32, 18, 21, 7 and 38, David announced. "They have active teams in 5 locations." Then David detected something that made his blood run cold. One electromagnetic signature was moving. Someone carrying a portable device was heading directly toward the building's main server farm on the 25th floor. "They're going for the central data repository," David told Janet. "If they access those servers, they'll have everything." Racing toward the 25th floor, David's equipment detected something that changed everything about their understanding of the operation. The electromagnetic signature heading for the server farm was broadcasting a recognition code identifying it as authorized maintenance personnel. "Whoever is heading for those servers has legitimate building access," David said. "They're not just inside the building, they're supposed to be here." The 25th floor server farm was protected by multiple security layers, but the biometric scanner showed an active authorization for Kevin Hartley, Senior Systems Administrator with 4 years at building management and full access to all tenant systems. They found Kevin calmly copying data from multiple tenant servers simultaneously. He looked up without surprise when they approached, seeming almost relieved. "Ms. Morrison," Kevin said, continuing to type. "I wondered when you'd figure it out. Though I didn't expect a maintenance technician to crack the pattern. Why the elaborate false alarm scheme?" Janet asked. "You could have copied this data any time." Kevin smiled. "Because the data isn't the real target. It's the distraction. While you've been chasing electromagnetic signatures, my associates have been accessing something much more valuable." David's equipment detected a massive electromagnetic surge from the building's deeper sublevel areas, the vault levels that most people didn't know existed. 3 months of false alarms to map your security responses, Kevin continued. 3 months of conditioning your guards to move slowly, and most importantly, 3 months of establishing that electromagnetic anomalies are routine and harmless. Kevin had built a digital dead man's switch into the operation. If captured or if his access was revoked, a data destruction program would activate and erase every server in the facility. But David had found Kevin's crucial mistake. He had underestimated the persistence of a technician who never accepted that alarms were meaningless. While Kevin continued his data extraction, David made a discovery that would turn the entire operation on its head. The electromagnetic network was a two-way communication system. David could send signals through it just as easily as he could receive them. Working quietly while Kevin focused on his theft, David connected his equipment to the server farm's electromagnetic hub and began broadcasting a virus specifically designed to interfere with timing mechanisms controlling the vault operation. The effect was immediate. Kevin's screens began displaying error messages as his connection to underground teams became unstable. The carefully coordinated timing that had taken 3 months to perfect was falling apart. "What did you do?" Kevin demanded. "I gave you the same thing you gave us," David replied. "False signals. Your teams underground are receiving random timing data instead of your instructions." The electromagnetic chaos David introduced created the same confusion the criminals had inflicted on security teams. But unlike security guards, the criminal teams couldn't afford to ignore signals. Their operation depended on precise coordination. Kevin tried to shut down his network connection, but David's virus was designed to propagate through any device attempting to disconnect. "You're destroying months of work," Kevin said, his composure cracking. "I'm returning the favor." Janet suddenly looked up with alarm. "David, the teams in the vault levels aren't responding. Something's wrong down there." David realized his virus had disrupted building communication systems that security teams were using. In stopping the criminals, he might have trapped tactical teams underground with dangerous criminals now operating without coordination. "I can restore communications, but it will also restore their network," David said. Kevin looked up from his failed connection. "Actually, you'll be in a worse position. My teams have contingency plans for communication failures. Your teams don't." David faced an impossible choice: restore communications and allow criminals to resume their coordinated attack, or maintain disruption and risk security personnel safety. But David had learned that sometimes the best solution wasn't choosing between bad options, but creating a new option nobody had considered. David's modified virus was a masterpiece of electronic warfare disguised as a maintenance program. Instead of simply disrupting the criminal network, it began selectively routing communications based on authentication codes that only legitimate security personnel possessed. The effect was like watching order emerge from chaos. Janet's radio crackled back to life with reports from tactical teams throughout the building. Criminal teams in vault levels had been caught off guard by communication breakdown but had become more dangerous as coordination collapsed. Team 3 reporting from vault level B5 came a tense voice. "We have 4 suspects in custody, but they triggered some kind of fail-safe device. The vault door is sealed and we're detecting electronic interference indicating a possible explosive device." Kevin looked up with satisfaction mixed with resignation. "You stopped the theft, but you can't stop the destruction. The fail-safe activates if communications are disrupted for more than 30 minutes. You have less than 15 minutes to clear the building. But David was studying electromagnetic readings from his equipment. The fail-safe device's signature seemed familiar, similar to false alarm triggers but more complex and powerful. It's not a bomb, David said suddenly. It's another electromagnetic device. They're not planning to destroy the vault contents. They're planning to steal them electronically. The revelation changed everything. Physical theft would have been nearly impossible. But electronic theft, converting physical assets into digital records transferable anywhere in the world, was exactly the sophisticated crime Kevin's skills could accomplish. Cryptocurrency hardware wallets, digital precious metal certificates, electronic bearer bonds, David continued. Everything valuable in those vaults has an electronic component accessible remotely with the right equipment. Kevin's expression shifted from satisfaction to alarm as he realized David had figured out the real plan. The electromagnetic device wasn't a dead man's switch. It was the actual theft mechanism, designed to activate when physical theft failed. You can't stop it now, Kevin said, but his voice lacked earlier confidence. The device is automated. Even I can't shut it down remotely. David was already heading for the stairwell. Maybe you can't shut it down remotely, but I can shut it down locally. Descending toward the building's deepest levels, David found the fail-safe device attached to the vault level's main power distribution system. It was larger and more sophisticated than the false alarm devices, but operated on the same principles he had been studying. The countdown timer showed 11 minutes and 37 seconds remaining. David had 11 minutes to disarm a device representing months of criminal planning, but he had 20 years of experience fixing impossible systems, and he had learned that every electronic device, no matter how advanced, followed the same basic principles. The fail-safe device was designed to resist tampering by triggering immediately if primary circuits were disconnected. But David had discovered something during his false alarm analysis. The device wasn't just resistant to interference. It required specific electromagnetic signals to maintain its countdown timer. If David could identify and block those control signals, the device wouldn't detonate or activate theft protocols. It would simply stop functioning. Working with surgical precision and understanding that thousands of people's financial security depended on his success, David began tracing the device's signal pathways. The electromagnetic patterns were incredibly complex, but followed logical sequences he could disrupt. 7 minutes remaining, came Janet's voice through his radio. David, if you can't stop it, you need to get out. David had found the device's control frequency, a specific electromagnetic signature synchronizing all timing functions. By broadcasting a counter signal on the same frequency, he could create interference disrupting the countdown without triggering failsafes. The process required him to duel with the device using electromagnetic signals, matching its transmissions with precisely timed counter-transmissions that would cancel its commands. It was like conducting an orchestra where every wrong note could cause explosion or enable massive theft. 4 minutes remaining. David's counter signals were working, but the device adapted by switching to backup frequencies. He constantly adjusted his transmissions to match the device's countermeasures, creating an electronic battle played out in microseconds and radio waves. 2 minutes remaining. The device made a final attempt by sending a massive electromagnetic pulse designed to overwhelm any interference. But David was ready with his own maximum power transmission that met the device's signal head-on. The collision of electromagnetic forces created a feedback loop that shut down both David's equipment and the fail-safe device simultaneously. The vault level fell completely silent, except for air circulation systems. David, report. What's your status? Janet's voice crackled through his radio. The device is neutralized, David replied, looking at the now dormant system. The vault contents are secure, and the theft program has been terminated. The arrest of Kevin Hartley and neutralization of the vault device marked the end of immediate threat to Meridian Tower, but it was only the beginning of a larger investigation revealing the true scope of the criminal network that had used false alarms to mask one of the most sophisticated heists ever attempted. Federal investigators, working with David, analyzed the electromagnetic network throughout the building. What they discovered was an operation targeting not just Meridian Tower, but dozens of similar buildings across multiple cities. The false alarm technique had been tested and refined through smaller operations before being deployed against high-value targets. Kevin's confession revealed the network was led by former NSA signals specialist, Elena Vasquez, who had recruited technology professionals with legitimate access to critical infrastructure systems. The Meridian operation was actually proof of concept for a much larger scheme targeting 12 major financial centers simultaneously. "We were the beta test," Janet explained to a joint FBI-DHS task force. "If they had succeeded here, they would have refined their methods and deployed them against New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and 8 other cities." David's analysis showed criminals had developed technology turning any building's security system into a weapon against itself, using protective infrastructure as surveillance and attack mechanisms. "The genius of their approach," David explained to investigators, "was making us complicit in our own compromise. Every false alarm response provided intelligence about our procedures. Every ignored alarm proved their conditioning was working." The psychological warfare was particularly insidious. Criminals understood that security personnel were susceptible to habituation, gradually ignoring repeated harmless stimuli. By carefully calibrating false alarm frequency and timing, they had gradually eroded Meridian Tower's security effectiveness. But David's persistence in analyzing alarm patterns had inadvertently prevented a much larger catastrophe. Elena Vasquez's network had been monitoring multiple target buildings, waiting for Meridian's success before launching their coordinated national attack. David's electromagnetic network disruption had not only saved Meridian Tower, it had triggered premature exposure of the entire conspiracy. "Mr. Williams," said FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen, "your refusal to simply shut off those alarms prevented what could have been the largest coordinated financial crime in American history." 6 months later, David returned to Meridian Tower for a final systems check. The false alarm network had been completely removed and replaced with quantum encrypted detection systems, supposedly immune to electromagnetic interference. Janet, promoted to regional security director, met him with news about the investigation. Elena Vasquez got 45 years. Kevin Hartley 22 years, but we've identified 43 facilities where similar electromagnetic signatures have been detected. There could be others. David had been recruited to lead a federal task force technical analysis team, applying the pattern recognition skills that cracked the false alarm code to similar cases nationwide. The irony, David reflected, is that the alarms were never false at all. They were telling us exactly what was happening. We just didn't know how to listen. As David packed his equipment for the final time, he noticed the new security system showing all green lights, perfect silence indicating perfect security. But David had learned to be suspicious of perfect silence. In his experience, the most important truths were often hidden in the noise everyone else wanted to eliminate. Sometimes the most annoying signals carry the most critical warnings. Sometimes systems we trust can be turned against us. And sometimes the only thing standing between order and chaos is one person who refuses to believe problems are unsolvable. Have you ever encountered a persistent problem everyone wanted to ignore, only to discover it was trying to warn you about something important? Share your story in the comments. If this reminded you of the value of persistence in our technological age, subscribe to Real Security Stories. Where are you watching from today? Until next time, remember, when everyone wants to silence the alarms, maybe it's time to listen more carefully.